This is a $200 keyboard and this is a $70 keyboard. They both sound amazing, look amazing, and feel amazing. So why would you spend $200 when you can get something so good for $70? Are you just setting your wallet on fire when you buy a $200 keyboard? Well, not exactly. I've tested hundreds of keyboards all the way from $500+ down to as cheap as $5. So I'm going to help you figure out if it's worth going for the cheaper option or springing for something a little nicer. So let me introduce today's contestants. In the left corner, we have the Aula F75 coming in at $70. It's creamy, it's stocky, and value is shooting out of every orifice. Orifice. In the right corner, we have none other than the Crush 80. It's sexy, it's elegant, and it sounds like heaven. Sorry, Hepio. So why on earth would you pay so much more for the $200 option? What if I told you that just a mere 3 years ago, to get a board just like this, you would have to spend $400, $500, sometimes $600. And to top it all off, you would have to build it. Not to mention, the finished board still wouldn't have sounded as good or even felt as good. Those were the dark ages. Then keyboard companies realized, hey, most people sort of want the same thing, right? Usually the same size, switches, keycaps, and they started cranking out factories to produce these boards. So now the price went from $600 all the way down to $200. And while the personalization side of the hobby mostly died, RIP custom keyboards, you now have much more affordable pre-built options at $700 or even $99 like the Rainy 75. But that doesn't answer the question of should you get a $70 keyboard? Well, when you drop down to this price, you enter a different territory altogether. Instead of sleek aluminum with a chiseled back plate, you enter all plastic territory. Dun dun dun. If the 200 keyboards are being pumped out at the factory, these $70 keyboards are getting blasted at mega speed. And they come in a surprising amount of different color options and switches too. These are made with much cheaper materials and are somehow stitched together to get the price even lower and lower. These budget keyboard companies have figured out how to use ultra cheap materials to create a typing experience that rivals the $200 option. You heard me, this keyboard feels and sounds nearly as good as the $200 option. You just have to close your eyes. They are completely packed with 6 different layers of silicone and foams to make up for the lightness of the plastic case. Not to mention the plate and PCB are full of holes to mimic the soft and bouncing typing feel of a premium board. So it's almost a miracle they sound and feel so good. A lot of this comes down to the switches inside the keyboard. Are the switches in the $200 keyboard even better? Or did they just put in a cheap switch and pocket the money? My favorite switch option on the Aula is the Leobog Reapers, and the switch option on the Crush 80 are Kale Cocoa switches. To figure out which one is better, I conducted a little experiment. I took the Reapers out of this Aula and put them into the Crush 80. Then I took some Cocoa switches and put it into the Aula, and what I found surprised me. The $70 keyboard switches, the Leobog Reapers, actually sound better. They're creamy, they're thockier, while the Cocos are slightly clackier. But they have one major drawback. The Reapers feel much scratchier when typing. You see, when switches are put together in the factory, they apply a bit of lubricant inside the switch to make it feel smoother. In the past, we had to do that ourselves at home. Not anymore. But the Cocoa switches have a much better lubrication, so they feel much smoother to type on. So the Aula sounds better, but the Crush 80 feels better, which leads to the question. If the Aula sounds just as good as the Crush 80, why go for the more expensive premium option? Well, this is where the budget board struggles to compete. The looks. While a keyboard like the Aula has pretty nice keycaps, except for a few errors, you have a good design overall, but you can't fake the all aluminum board. without the aluminum. Plastic just never quite feels as premium, but it's not just the fact that it's metal that sets it apart, it's the combination of the small details that make it so much more fun and exciting to use. Between the glass back plate, the hidden dongle underneath the aluminum door, and a beautiful blue finish that perfectly matches the keycaps, and to top it all off with this little design above the arrow keys, it's all just chef's kiss. Plus, the color design on the keycaps feel much more premium than the Ala as well. So when you spring for the $200 keyboard, expect everything to look better and more put together. It's like eating gas station sushi versus going to a proper restaurant, sitting down, and getting a nice spicy tuna roll. Sushi. But looks and sound are only part of the picture. There are a few other things that can make or break your final purchasing decision. There are some ways that the Ala is flat out better than the Crush 80. I don't even know how it's possible, but it is. The Ala is more intuitive and easier to use. Like you just plug it in and it works. Using the wireless is seamless. It comes up with these toggle switches that let you easily swap between wired, Bluetooth, and 2.4 gigahertz. Not to mention, it even has a knob that lets you control the volume levels instead of having to go into your computer settings. For some reason, it's initially set up to change the RGB brightness, but you can swap that to volume by holding down the volume knob. And it has kick-up feet with 3 different typing angles. The $200 keyboard has none. And on the Crush 80, you can't even turn this thing on without taking off the caps lock key and then holding on some key combinations to make it work. Like seriously, just have it work out of the box and put some toggle switches on it. With that being said though, once you initially set this up, you don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. It does make up for a lot of the quality of life drawbacks with other features that the Ala can't even dream of having. Features that you wouldn't even have seen last year. This keyboard lets you pop the case open without any screws at all. You just lift up on the top case and it pops open like magic. This is called a ball catch design, and it's so nice if you like to tinker with your board by trying out different foams, tape mods, and doing other weird things to your keyboard. But don't tell me what you're doing. Don't comment it down below. And you don't need to mess around with any annoying ribbon cables because it has a pogo connection. It requires 0 effort to disconnect. It pops right off and then it pops right back on. So I can't understate how nice these features are to have if you want to play around with your keyboard at all. While the features are really nice, most people won't ever mod their keyboards, so it doesn't do much for the majority of people. So should you just go for the $70 keyboard if you don't plan on modding? Well, there's one more thing you should consider. Something that the Ala fails miserably at. It's so bad. In fact, it's basically unusable. And that's this. This tiny little baby screen is the software for the Ala F75. And no, I can't make the screen any bigger, and I have no idea what's even happening on the screen. With the Crush 80, you have access to the most premium open source software called VIA. With VIA, you can change all the settings on your board without having to download bloated, useless software, and it works on your browser on any computer with an internet connection. It's just so nice to have. So if you want to try a nicer keyboard, you really can't go wrong with a keyboard like the Crush 80 or another option called the Evo 80 with basically the same features, different switches, different colors, but they're pretty similar. However, not all $200 keyboards are created equal. There are a lot of bad ones out there, and I recommend staying away from most big gaming keyboard brands, except for maybe Wu-Tang. Always do your due diligence and be especially careful with sponsored reviews. If you're buying your first keyboard or you're on a budget, go for the cheaper option. You can always upgrade in a few years. Keyboards are just a luxury product anyways. Check out my favorite keyboards of 2025 right here.